Welcome, everybody. This is an educational video, Growing Your Business 101, presented by Harvest Returns. All right, before we get into it, I thought I'd talk a little bit about who we are. So as you can see there, Chris and I are both military veterans. Chris did a lot of time in the Navy and myself in the Army. We've had some other jobs that built our expertise up. We're both Aggies from Texas A&M, and we just have a passion for agriculture. And that's really why we got started and wanted to start this company. Some company facts, of course, we're an online platform where we're crowdfunding agricultural operations. We've raised over $30 million for all kinds of different kinds of ag businesses, farms, ranches, agriculture technology companies, agribusinesses, processors, etc. So starting and forming your business. These are just some very generic steps any business would have to go through, most of these, but they're definitely applicable to ag businesses. All right, so when you're starting your company, you gotta figure out, well, what's my structure going to be? Are you a for-profit, or you're not non-for-profit company? Or are you just a self-employed consultant, like a 1099 kind of consultant? For your for-profit structures, your limited liability companies, your C Corps, your S Corps, it's important to understand what those actually mean. And of course, you want to talk to an attorney or a tax professional to understand what those implications are. What does it mean when you're an LLC, when you're dealing with taxes? What does it mean when you're a C Corp, and you're dealing with shareholders, et cetera? And of course, for the nonprofit organizations, you definitely want to know what that means as far as what your revenue structure can look like. And of course, you got to understand where you operate and where you are formed, maybe two different places, but those also have implications as far as your reporting and tax requirements. Delaware LLCs are probably your most common, just because of the legal structure for corporate entities there. Foreign entity filings, if you are a Delaware LLC and you are operating in the state of Texas, like we are, you have to do certain filings for that state, just to let them know, hey, this is where we're filed and this is where we're operating. Most of the times they're just asking for an acknowledgement. Sometimes you have to do some fees and some other filings, just to, state dependent. But you always want to make sure that where you are filed and where you're operating, understand the rules when it comes to unemployment insurance, franchise tax, anything that those states that's specific to that state for their labor laws. All right, so when you are operating a business, you of course hopefully are dealing with cash, and you got to be able to take care of your cash flow and where you put that cash, and protect it from any of the several risks that are out there these days, whether it be theft, whether it be cybercrime, or just misplacing something. You definitely want to take care of your cash. So when you're looking at your bank accounts, banks are going to ask you for certain things when you're opening an account for your entity. They're going to ask you for documents like your operating agreement, and they're going to ask you like who's on the capitalization table. So you want to be able to provide that information. And then when you're choosing what kind of account to put it in, you definitely need to understand the tax implications of each of those accounts. And a checking account's probably not going to make you a lot of interest day to day, but a savings account, especially a high yield savings account, you're going to be making some interest during the year, and you're going to need to pay taxes on that interest. So you want to be careful about where you put your money and how quickly you can access it when you need it. Obviously, something like a CD or a treasury that locks up your money for a certain amount of times. So if you need that cash, you don't want to lock it up. When you're accounting for your cash, you want to make sure you've got some level of professional, whether an accountant or a CPA once a year looking at your books. But there's plenty of apps and softwares out there. Here's just a couple examples. QuickBooks and Xero are accounting softwares made for the layman or the non-professional accountant, that you can account for all your expenditures and your revenue. And the app kind of helps you walks you through how to take care of that, how to code it properly for your financial statements. Of course, risk mitigation, you don't want to put too much cash into one single account. And you think about what FDIC insures. You don't want to put more than a certain dollar amount in one account. You want to kind of spread it out. And like I mentioned before, you got to think about that access. Is it safe, but is it also accessible when I need it in a jam? All right, your professional services. These are the three legs of this stool that keep your company upright. Of course, your legal, your lawyer, your attorney is going to help you with the structure of the company. They're going to help you with whether it's taking on investors or what filings you need to do in each state. And there's different kinds of lawyers too. So if you go to a corporate lawyer and try to ask them about, hey, I'm getting sued for something, they're probably not going to be able to help you. Vice versa. If you go to a litigator and ask them about selling securities, they're probably not going to be able to help you. So your corporate attorney is someone, and a securities attorney is probably somebody you need to have in your address book that you can reach out to anytime. And then a litigator, of course, is only if you need that. Hopefully you never need that. But the corporate attorney, you definitely want on speed dial. On the banking side, same thing. Your account officer, when you open up your account, you want to make a good relationship with that person, because you're probably going to be talking to them, several times a year about the health of your accounts, things that you're looking for, setting your goals for your cash flow. You want to talk to that person. And then, of course, if you're looking at taking on some debt for buying equipment or buying a building or land, that loan officer, obviously, you want to build a good relationship with them. And as I mentioned before, that accounting professional is going to keep you straight and keep your books looking clean. So you want to have a good connection in each one of these three legs of the stool. All right, so once you got the company formed, now you've got to market it. You've got to let people know that you exist. So why is the brand important? You need to be recognizable. You need people to hear your name and go, I know exactly who you're talking about, or see your logo and go, oh yeah, that's the company that does this. We use an example here from one of the companies we raise money for, and they have a very recognizable logo, a name that when you hear that name, like, okay, I remember who you're talking about. That's those guys that sell that delicious hamburger meat. So there's different ways you can go about building that. The logo, if you're a creative person and you have that kind of art background, you can come up with something pretty cool. But if you're like me and you're not quite on the creative side when it comes to graphics, there's companies like we mentioned one here, Fiverr. That's a website you go to, and you gotta just put some inputs in there, like, I'm this kind of company and I like these colors, and they will actually help develop your logo with your input, and then they work to build something that you're happy with. So you definitely want to have that logo. When you're using media, just be careful that you're not using someone else's product. You obviously want to use photos that are copyright free, music that's copyright free, because you don't want to find yourself in trouble because you've encroached on somebody else's product. You also want to be consistent, and you don't want to have a red logo here and a black logo there, or you don't want to have your marketing be different on different platforms, because you want people to recognize it and you want it to be rememberable. All right, so for those that are veteran companies, and we work a lot with those, both in the general and in the ag sector, it's really your decision to decide if you want to disclose that. The different times in our history, it mattered. And so you have to decide how much you want to tell people you are a veteran-owned company. Chris and I both, we're very proud of our service, and we are very open about the time that we spent in our nation's military. And so most people find that as a level of trust when they hear, hey, these two guys are veterans, they served, and now they're in the private sector. So it's really up to you to understand what your customer base is and if this would resonate with them, either positively or negatively. So you just want to be respectful about it. Obviously, respect all those that have served, but at the same time, make sure you're doing what's right for your business. All right, so as you can see, we've put some examples here of the kind of labels, certifications that can go on some of the ag products. There are some companies, if they're a distributor for ag products, they require some of these. Usually, a lot of these certifications will come with some kind of cost. Like, we will come out and certify you are USD organic. For this cost, you have to meet these requirements. So you got to measure that. What's your ROI? What's your return on investment? So if you're spending the money to get the certified 100% Texas grown sticker on all your product, was it worth that when you're selling your product, and then in your margins, are you getting that money back? So they are very useful in marketing, but you definitely want to do that assessment to see if it's worth your time. All right, social media. I'm just one of those people. I'm that age group that social media is a little still difficult for me, but I've gotten used to it for sure working with a company. It's something that you've got to get comfortable with, because there are so many customers on social media, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or X, LinkedIn. There are so many different platforms, Reddit, you could just name them all day. So this is a avenue to your customer base. And so you want to be comfortable with it, whether you're doing it or not, or you're hiring somebody to do it for you. You got to have presence. There's usually people hold kind of a red flag to a company or a person. It's like, hey, I'm interested in your product, but I see that you're not on Facebook. Something must be nefarious, or something must be wrong about this if they don't have a presence. So you want to be very deliberate in your social media. And as you can see there, pictures are 1,000 words and videos are 10,000 pictures. So videos are a great way to show people, showcase your brand, showcase your product, and make sure that the details on all your platforms are consistent. How to get in touch with you, where you are, what your team is, make sure that is consistent and spelled properly on all your different websites and social media pages. All right, selling and distribution. So this is basically a key avenue to your revenue. There are different ways to get your product in front of customers. We've seen, especially in the beef industry or other livestock industry that are processing for meat, this direct to customer process has been very beneficial. So you're kind of cutting out the distributors and the grocery stores and you're going direct to the customer. Of course, that's saves you some money on that, but it also adds some work on your part where you've got to actually put all the boxes together and get them either through the post, through the mail, or in some kind of delivery service. So you got to make that decision based on your cash flow and your level of effort. But you can be creative, like it says there. You can go direct to restaurants if you're selling produce. You go to farmers markets, co-ops, all kinds of avenues to do it. But you got to do what makes sense for your business, not only cost wise, but time wise. If you're spending 3 days a week just doing deliveries and you're only doing 3 or 4 days of work on the farm, you might need to look into hiring somebody to do that delivery for you because you don't want to unbalance your company that way. Again, continue with distribution. You've got to make sales to make revenue. And so whatever your business is, you've got to be closing, you got to be signing contracts, you've got to be delivering product. And ABC's of business is Coffees for Closers. If anybody's seen Glenn Ross, we love that movie in here. You've got to be moving product. Sales solves a lot of problems. And so you've got to keep that cash flow going. So you can be the most incredible farmer the world's ever seen, but if you can't get that product to market, you're not going to be in business very long. So the advertising side, word of mouth is always a great one. It's free. So if you've got a good product and you've got a customer base that's talking about it through social media and things like that, that's great. And if you always want to work towards that, but you are going to need to put a little cash in there. Sometimes it's putting fuel in the gas tank. You've got to get your search engine optimization up. You want people to, when they go to Google and type in your product or your name, it's the first thing that pops up. So you got to have a lot of presence on the web for that. Like I mentioned, free media is always better, but don't be afraid to build that email list and don't be afraid to, reach out to your customer base and say, hey, we've got a new product. Hey, we've got this event going on. We'd love you to come out and try our new product. So email lists have been very effective for our company and many other companies out there for, if it's for the customer base that may have a Facebook account, but don't check it very often. Just about everybody checks their emails on a daily basis. And don't get too eager to spend money on advertising if you don't actually need it. So you'll have to, do some experimentation, spend a little money with Facebook and Google, see how it works out, maybe increase or decrease that monthly spend just to see how your customer base is growing. So kind of summarize on sales and marketing, you've got to tell your story. And I promise you that people are interested in it. We come across investors every day that just want to know what's going on the farm. They want to be a part of that story, whether they're buying the product or investing in the operation. They want to know what you're doing. Be real, don't be fake. That people spot that really easily. So tell your story and tell it in a genuine fashion. Got to have, like I said, got to have that logo, got to have that social media presence so people know they can find you. Always go in it with your full heart. Don't half-ass it. And if you find a place where you've got some gaps where if you're not good at marketing, you can hire someone, you can hire a service. We've had great success with interns that are eager to work, specifically in things like marketing or in accounting. Those young people are looking to get experience so that they can take that on in their real life, and they're a great source of very motivated labor. All right, so you've got the company built, you've been marketing, you're getting some sales, and now you need to grow, and so it's time to raise capital. So most people, when they're raising capital, they're doing it in two of these avenues. If you're doing an equity raise into your company, you're selling securities. So you are selling a piece of the company to an investor for cash. They provide the cash, you're providing them some agreed upon membership interest in the entity or number of shares in the corporation. And that for the investor means they're going to get something from you, whether it's a share of the profits or a big exit. but you're also sharing some of the risk with your investor. On the debt side, this is what most people are used to. You go to the bank, you put up some collateral like your land or your equipment, and then you have to pay payments. Interest rate are a little bit on the high side compared to the last few years. And so people are feeling that, of course. Your debt's going to have a specific payoff timetable, and then you're going to have to either pay off that debt or refinance it with either more debt or with, say, equity investment. Of course, this risk is a little bit higher on you, the operator, because you've had to put some kind of collateral up, and the bank's managing its own risk with the interest rates and your payment schedule. So these are the two kind of main ways that people seek out capital for their business. I've talked about the traditional side with the banks. Crowdfunding has been something that's been in the United States since 2012. And so there are more and more opportunities to find capital outside of the traditional sources. So when you're going after investors, you're looking for the folks that would like to be a part of your operation. But what motivates an investor? And it really breaks down to, we always say investors are either greedy or they're fearful, or both at the same time. So you'll have investors of all different sizes and shapes and risk return profiles. Some investors want, low risk, especially those looking in the agriculture sector. They've already got investments in stocks and high risk technology companies. So they usually come to the ag space looking for something a little more steady and a little more safe. On the returns, that usually paces with the risk level. They understand that a farm is probably not going to produce the same kind of returns that a technology stock would, or an early biotech company. So they understand that the returns are going to be on the lower end compared to some of those other kind of companies. There are some tax benefits in the ag community. So if a farm is experiencing some of those tax benefits, those can be passed on to investors in an LLC structure. But again, you want to talk to your tax professional about understanding that. And as I mentioned before, investors are looking for a connection to their food source. They're looking for a way to connect with the earth. They've seen the disruption in supply chains and the food distribution network over the last decade. And so they want to be connected to something that they can't access all the time, which is beautiful countryside, the farm, and the farm lifestyle. And so when you're trying to paint your picture for the investors, you want to think about these considerations, and this is how you're going to attract them. All right, so getting started, every company starts with a dream. From that dream, you develop a business plan. You go through, you want to say numbers. We're talking about financials. This is my cash flow situation. This is my balance sheet. This is what my pro forma financials are. These are my projections of what I'm going to be able to do with investor capital. Of course, you got your legal structure that you set up. And from this is how from this launch pad is where you go and start asking and looking for investors. The two big things you want to think about in attracting investors is the business plan and the financial projections. Those both need to outline how you're going to exit the investor from the deal. There are some investors that want to be a part of the farm life for 30 years, but most usually want to be in and out within 3 to 5 years. They invest, they feel the connection, they get some return, they exit the deal, and then they move on to the next deal. This is how they're mitigating their own risk from being tied up into the same operation too long, and being able to invest in other opportunities. So when you're putting this together for investors, your pitch deck, as some people might call it, these three things are kind of what you really want to focus on. So your pitch deck is basically the verbal version of your financials. So you want to tell people kind of what you're doing, how you're doing it, who is the team that's doing it, how are you planning to get your product to market, and then how are you going to return investors their capital. So there's several ways, several websites that you can search on the web that can help you put a pitch deck together. You can look through other people's pitch deck, other companies, and get a sense of what they look like. But these are the things that you really want to make sure you're highlighting in your pitch deck. So your capital raise strategy, when you're ready to move forward, it's like, okay, I'm doing this and I want to do it in a legal way and not get in any trouble. These are the things that you're going to have to put together. So I already mentioned the big three, how much you're raising, the return on the investment and the exit. You've got to show investors, you got to walk the dog with them, as they say, on you give me money, this is what I'm going to do with it, and this is how I'm going to get it back in your pocket with a little extra. And you got to be able to talk through that in your business plan and your financial projections. your offering documents. So this is where we're getting into selling securities. And you want to make sure you got the right paper trail and you got the right professionals putting stuff together for you. Your PPM, your private placement memorandum, is just that. It's a memorandum stating this is what we're doing, this is the business. It's a lot of legalese language. And then your subscription agreement is the document that ties the investor to whatever structure of deal you're trying to do. So if you're selling equity in your farm's LLC, that subscription agreement is what connects that investor to that company. And of course, you may have several exhibits inside of your document package. When you're promoting the selling of securities, you've got to be very careful about how you do that. Of course, the government, US government, has put a lot of rules on that to protect both you, the company, and the consumer or the investor from anything going wrong. So you really want to make sure you're promoting that deal in the proper way. Make sure that you're talking to your security and corporate attorney about that, or you're talking to a company like Harvest Returns that knows those rules and can keep you from getting in trouble. So how do you get in trouble? Well, you market it in a way that you're not allowed to. You sell securities in an improper way. So here's just some of the agencies out there that kind of pay attention to that world. The crowdfunding model was really introduced in the United States because of the Jobs Act of 2012. It's had some updates and revisions. And so you really want to make sure you understand that before you just go out and start talking to people going, hey, join our farm and buy a piece of the action. You got to be careful and you got to know what rules are about marketing that. So when you are doing a crowdfunded money raise operation, of course, what is it going to cost you? So like all those documents I mentioned, how are you putting those together? Are you paying an attorney to do it? Are you coming to a firm like ours to do that for you? So there's some costs associated with that. When you're marketing, you're marketing your company, of course, but when you're marketing your capital raise, you got to know how much you can afford to spend on that, depending, and think about what kind of money you're raising. When you are doing all of the transactions, taking money from investors and putting it in an escrow account, handling the wire transfer fees and all the ACH fees and check processing fees, those money management fees will add up. So you gotta be thinking about that. Every year, if you take on investors, every year you owe them some kind of tax document. If they're equity investors in your company, you're likely going to owe them a Schedule K-1. If you are borrowing money from investors, you're going to have to provide them with a 1099 INT. So you got to think about the structure of the deal and what you're going to owe them every single year, what that's going to cost you in accounting fees. Of course, if you use a crowdfunding platform, there's going to be some fees for using that website, the technology used. So these are all things that will add up, and you want to consider what is that cost of capital going to be for the money that I'm trying to raise. So crowdfunding, I've mentioned that several times already. So what is it exactly? Most people may have heard of kind of the social donor style, these GoFundMes. Hey, grandma's really sick. She really can't afford her medicine. I've opened up a GoFundMe page. Would anybody like to donate to my grandma's medicine? And so in that sense, you are providing cash, but you understand that there's really is no return other than emotional return. Kickstarter is the style of, hey, I'm inventing this new watch. If you buy my watch for $500, I'll send you one of the first editions that come out, but I'm going to use your $500 to invest in my manufacturing operations. And Indiegogo is very similar. On the equity side, these are just some examples. I think Start Engine is probably one of the largest ones. That's where companies of all flavors and sizes are going to raise capital through a crowdfunding site. So if you would like to know more about that process, raising capital from investors that are interested in the ag community, we'd be happy to talk to you. These are just some of the things that we offer to farm businesses. We work with you on your business plan. We'll educate you on marketing and how we're able to do that legally for a capital raise. And then, of course, staying compliant with everything as far as reporting goes, as far as marketing, as far as taking care of investors. That's what we do. So feel free to reach out to us at that email down there, phone, or just go to our website, and we would be happy to talk to you in the future. Thank you for your time today, and we hope to hear from you soon.